Happy Wednesday, everybody. I hope yours is going well. This video today is going to be for those people who are just starting to think about nursing as a career, and maybe you need a little bit more perspective in terms of what the job might entail, or are you the right person for this kind of job, or do you have the right kind of personality? If those are the kinds of questions that you might have about nursing, then this video is for you. This video is not for people who are kind of looking into more specifics in terms of should I be in the med surge or ICU, or what kind of nurse should I be. I think that's a little bit beyond the scope of this video. But if you're kind of just starting out, looking into career paths, or maybe you're going into a second career, or you need a career change and you'd like some version of what a day in the hospital feels like, well, then this video is for you. So the way I'm going to do that is by kind of separating the field of nursing into three really broad categories. The first is going to be the medical part about nursing. The second is going to be the human part, right? The human interaction part about nursing, which entails patient interaction. It entails your interaction with your coworkers, including the doctors, actually, right? There's a perception that the doctors are an authority, and while they are an authority, you're part of the team, right? You're all part of a team. But we'll talk about that too. And then the third part, of course, is the stress about nursing, right? You can't really go talk about nursing without describing the stress you might feel, because it is really real. And it is something that you will have to navigate your way around. So to get started, the medical part about nursing, really the way I like to think, first of all, that the medical part about nursing will never not be cool to me personally, right? And I think that stems from having a background in science. My first undergrad was in health sciences, right? It was in biochemistry. And so having that kind of background knowledge and being able to see it at play in the hospital setting is forever going to be humbling and forever going to be cool to me. Just really simple things, right? Like, knowledge of the hydrophilic nature of some ointments that you put on wounds or something like that, or the reason why normal saline blends well with your blood is because it's an isotonic solution, right? Not to say that ever really gets communicated, and not to say that you have to understand that concept to be able to do nursing, right? You don't necessarily need a deep understanding of science either, but an awareness is good. And the fact that I've been aware of the science behind what's going on, these medical procedures or the medications that we give to patients, right? Kind of just having an awareness of the science behind it really makes what you're doing cool, right? Seeing this like giant dialysis machine clean out this person's blood, but then in the background knowing that, okay, the reason we're doing that is because there's an accumulation of sodium, potassium, nitrogen ions, all of that coming into play, and how that might affect the whole biochemistry of the body. It's just breathtaking, right? I mean, that part of it will just always be cool to me. And I think if you're going into the nursing field, you need to have some of that, right? You need to be privy to some of the science, right? It's because it's not, in contrast to being a lawyer or something where your language is the thing there. In medicine, it's science. Science is your base. And if that's you, then I think nursing may be an option for you, right? And so to kind of summarize all of that, I think I wouldn't say it's a requirement, but it'll really help you move forward in the nursing field if you enjoy science, right? Because the medical field really is a great example of how science is applied in real life. right? It's not, medicine is not carried out in a lab. I mean, some of it is, right, in terms of the research of the medications and the studies that you have to do to be able to integrate a certain treatment modality into the general medical discourse. So, of course, there's always research involved in that, but on the side of nursing, if at the bedside or even if you're outpatient, you're really participating in the products of scientific research. And that's just like, whoa, and of course during the day you're not thinking about that. You're thinking about like, oh, I have like X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G to do, right? And I got to do that within the 12-hour span that I have, which seems like a long time, but within the course of a day it goes by fast, right? It's a blur almost sometimes, right? Especially if you have a really busy day. But there are times when you're kind of just, you step back and just see things, see new treatments or see novel ideas that the doctors come up with to be able to treat someone, or see the thought process behind some of the doctors and why they think that this specific treatment will be useful for this specific person. And hearing them talk about that it's cool. So that's the medical side of things. The second part of nursing is going to be the human interaction part, right? Of course, to be a nurse, you are going to have to work with people. I think pretty much in all fields, whether you're in the hospital at bedside or in the outpatient field or any sort of subsection of nursing that you go to, will require you to talk to people, to interact with people, right? And so if you aren't that kind of person, not to say that you can't learn either, right? Sometimes you could be so eager to pursue the medical part of things that sometimes you can forget about the human side of this job. And so that's a really big part of it, right? So in nursing school, they teach you a lot about patient-centered interaction and therapeutic communication. And you learn that how you learn that, right? You try to typify, really, you try to put into black and white how to be caring for a person, right? Or how to be kind and how to show love to someone, right? In the context of your job, right? You're also not there to baby someone. You're also not there to be someone's mother or someone's dad, right? You're there to be an advocate for someone, right? Especially on the patient side, right? You're advocating for them, but you're also advocating on the other side. You're advocating for the medical treatment plan, right? So sometimes what you will find is that what is the optimal medical treatment plan for someone isn't the optimal treatment plan for someone's life. You will find that a lot in the field. And so it's not only up to you, but it's good for you to be aware of that part of a patient's life, right? So that you can effectively advocate for them within the medical system, because you, as a nurse, will know how to navigate the medical system and how to navigate the science and how to navigate what you would call the pathophysiology of a disease process, right? Which is basically just how a disease works, right? So you have an awareness of that, to where you can bridge the gap between the lack of knowledge a patient might have and the knowledge that a doctor might have, and then kind of be the person who connects those dots for someone, right? Because it's difficult to have so many things thrown at you, and kind of have to sort it out yourself, right? It's good to have someone, aka your nurse, to help you with that, right? And that's not to say you as a nurse, you're not really gonna make critical decisions. Sometimes you are, sometimes you have to in the moment, but for the most part, the doctors will lay out the treatment plan for you, then it's your job to kind of weave around that and to see where you can achieve a balance for this person in order to achieve the best outcome for them, treatment wise and health wise, right? But it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to sort through someone's life, because while, if someone has like a fractured toe and then you're telling them to not bear weight, but they need to go work at their job, because if they don't, then they can't afford rent. What can you do about that, right? You can't just say, well, the medical plan tells you that you really shouldn't be standing on it. When this person say, well, what are you going to do when I can't pay rent and I'm homeless? Right? I mean, it's not a matter of being against each other. It's just a matter of like having to figure out a middle ground in situations like that, which can be very, very difficult to be involved in. But that is the type of thing that the job does entail. And so if that's already stressing you out, then you think long and hard about it, because it's not, I don't want to give the perception that that's a bad part about the job. It's actually a really enlightening part about the job, right? To be involved in someone's life, to be people at the hospital are vulnerable to you. Their whole life is exposed to you. You get to see them at their most vulnerable state. Sometimes that can be not pretty. It's not all flowers and daisies, the things that you hear, the things that are hurled at you too. But you got to understand that it's being an advocate for someone means being able to kind of sort through the emotions of the situation too, right? Because aside from the medical treatment plan that you're trying to employ, people who are sick are emotional, right? I mean, that's just you got to understand that. And that's another thing. You got to be in tune with how people feel about situations, right? And then you got to be in tune with how sometimes people can say one thing but mean another thing. And that's kind of me trying to put in a nutshell how to interact with people who are sick, right? Of course, no amount of me talking about it will ever be able to really show you how it is, other than actually experiencing it for yourself. But I hope I was able to give you perspective on that. The other thing about interacting with other people at the job is actually interacting with your coworkers, your doctors, your managers, and everyone else in between who works at the hospital, right? Everyone is a team here, and everyone has, really, the goal of the hospital is to promote health for people, right? That's it. And everyone's role in the hospital has a say in that, right? There's no one that supersedes the other. It really shouldn't be looked like that. It's just people have different roles for the different skills that they have. It's just like life. The hospital is like its own little mini ecosystem. And so it will have some things like that, right? Like, people have different skills. Just because you're a nurse or just because you're a doctor, and doesn't mean that it just doesn't mean anything. We both have different scopes of practice is what it means. That's what it is. And I say that because sometimes it can be intimidating, especially when you're starting out, to try to communicate to everyone, right? Because you don't really know much, and probably they know you don't know much because they haven't seen you before. So it's that, right? It's overall the human interaction part of it. Really, it's being in tune with your role as an advocate to your patient, but also understanding the medical side of things, the medical treatment, the science behind it, and any education that has to happen in between that is partly your job, not solely your job, but it's good for you to practice that kind of thing when you are a nurse. And so all of that kind of leads us to the last section of this, which is the stress, right? The stress involved in nursing, the stress involved in the medical field. Um, I think I think after the pandemic, after COVID, I think people who weren't in the medical field maybe got a glimpse of that. Granted, the pandemic was, it was just a full blown global thing, so that's also not very common, of course. Um, but the stress that you saw in the media, that's real. That exists even without COVID. And I fell under that misconception too in terms of the stress involved in COVID. It was stressful. It was stressful, and you kind of trick yourself into thinking, well, when this is over, the job kind of gets easier. It doesn't. It doesn't. The same stress you felt during COVID, you feel the same thing when it's not COVID. It's just not as in your face because it's not all over in the media and not everyone is quarantining, but it's the same. You still, the stress that you feel working in the medical field are things like feeling overwhelmed, uh, feelings of anxiety, feeling that you feel like you're putting so much into something, and you just feel like you're not getting anything in return. And not to say that you're really expecting anything in return, because you're not. If you decide to become a nurse, you do have to kind of let go of the reciprocal nature of life, right? You kind of have to understand that the stress of the job is a part of it, and actually being a nurse is the thing you're looking for. There's no other payoff other than actually being in the medical field, right? Um, because there's a way you can kind of talk to yourself about it, in dealing with the stress of the job, where maybe I'm dealing with this hardship because in the future something good is going to happen to me, or you almost come to expect good karma to come because you work in the medical field. And these are real feelings that I've gone through too. The expectation of something, but it's really not it. You have to reconfigure your brain into thinking like, well, this job stresses me out, but there's a reward to it too, and the reward is, the anxiety that comes along with it, feeling overwhelmed, feeling like you just can't take it anymore. That is a real side of it, and sometimes it can be difficult for people to bear, and sometimes it can get to the point where you thought, once you start feeling the stress of the job, you feel like maybe you made the wrong career choice. Um, and so that's where the other two, your love for medicine, your love for science, and your love for interacting with people kind of balances the stress out, or it should balance the stress out. Because if it doesn't, then you have no silver lining. Or maybe you do. I mean, granted, I haven't talked about all aspects of the medical field, right? It's not like if you don't like science or you don't like talking to people, you can't be a nurse. I don't want anyone can be a nurse. I would say that. It's just a matter of a choice, really. But you don't want to be miserable during it either. All right, that was kind of a bit rambly there, so I want to tighten things up. Yeah, look, the stress of the job is real, and you're going to be yelled at. Things that weren't really your fault are going to be your fault, and you're just going to have to accept that. Um, but again, the reward is that you get to be involved in people's lives, and you really get to be a factor in helping someone back to their normal state of health. And you really get to kind of embody, and this is going to sound really cheesy, but you get to embody sort of being the change you want to see in the world. You really, really do. In the medical field, you really have an opportunity to be a good person, to be a good person to someone. And that part, above all, will be the thing that keeps me in this job. It's the ability to help people, right? The ability to be thrown into a situation where I'm able to care for someone. That's the job. That's truly the job. And if you don't like doing that, then it might not be the right choice for you, right? I don't know. I don't want to be so to the point about it, or so like, again, I think anyone can be a nurse, but personally, that's the part that keeps me in it. It's truly being able to be a nurse, right? Being able to care for someone, being able to participate in the science of it all. And then you'll find that with all of the things that happens in the medical field and in the nursing field, the lessons you end up learning make you such a better person, right? Yeah, the job stresses you out, but the flip side of that is that you learn how to be calm in your regular life. You know which things to be stressed about, you know which things are not. And granted, it takes a while to get to that point, right? Sometimes you go home and you're just kind of crippled by the anxiety that you feel too. Yeah, that's an unfortunate byproduct of the job. But if you could get over that, it makes you a really strong person. It makes you so down to earth. It made me so down to earth. It made me so humbled. And it constantly offers me perspective in terms of when I think things are going bad for me. You know, you think of the people that you take care of, and it's like, man, like, and not to say that life is about comparing each other's problems either, but to have that kind of perspective, it humbles you. It really, really humbles you. Some people's situations. And I think that's an important part of the job too, is being willing to welcome someone else's way of life into your own perspective. And having that, and having learned that lesson from the job, I'm always going to be thankful for, because that kind of understanding how to see things through another person's eyes, being able to know how to walk in someone else's shoes, is an invaluable life skill, and that'll help you anywhere. That being said, I think I've been rambling on about nursing. So hopefully these past 20 minutes have kind of helped you, or, you know, you can rewind it and kind of re-listen to the things that I might say, because this was a really candid discussion about nursing, and I felt like I did ramble a little bit, but I think it's good to have an honest perspective on the job. And so if this helped you, I'm really glad it did. And if you do decide to be a nurse, take care of yourself. And I'm telling you, it's a really good job. It's cool. That being said, have a happy Wednesday, and I hope to see you soon. Peace.